There is a technique to make a person talk called torture, and our main character fell under it. He was completely exhausted after the colossal beatings, and to prevent him from screaming too much, they tied his mouth. The man who was doing this procedure decided to show his tool and said that it would return to square. The guy screamed loudly in pain, but no one could hear him because he was underground. The enemy said that this test subject's name is Kim Sojun, and he is 20 years old, and he is from a country called Korea on Earth. He also likes to play games and hates matcha-flavored desserts. Before he could say a word, the enemy immediately touched his ear with his axe. And I asked the guy if he was deaf, and if so, he needed a hearing aid, and he would gladly make his ear canals bigger. After such words, only Seojun's screams could be heard. The enemy told him that now that he could hear much better, he would ask him again, and his answer should be positive. The enemy decided to ask about the second princess and the man who killed her. And the warrior Sojun did it? Seojun wondered at this moment. When did things go wrong for him? And what happened to his ordinary life? He is a player named Kim Sojun. And in the evening while he was playing, he found out that the master of the other team was caught. And he just entered college, like all the other regular college students. In the morning, he closed the door and said he was heading to school. He had an ordinary family and an ordinary life. But his mother told him at the end that he should not go to the cyber cafe today. But Seojun was so addicted that he was always an enemy to his parents regarding games. And opening the door he could not even expect. Raising his head, he saw that he was in another world, where the inhabitants were very different from his world. Seojun turned around and saw the door he had entered through disappear in front of his face, and now he realized that he was a warrior of this world. But for the first time he asked, "What is this?" While new people appeared around him. At that moment, 4 warriors were summoned. One of them was a high school student, a grandfather, and a child. And a college student, he, Kim Sojun. But Sojun didn't become discouraged and started shouting, asking if he had become the main character of this world. And now he can learn sword fighting, be a sage and a necromancer, and he just needs to go through it and he will be the best. Seojun fully got into the role of the main character and decided to open the status window by shouting loudly. But when he opened his eyes, he saw that nothing had appeared in front of him. Only the players looked at him as if he were a fool. But suddenly an elf came up to them and said that unfortunately, there is no such thing as a status window here, although they have a skill. The elf came up and introduced herself as the second princess of this world and called her Natanya. Natanya smiled before saying hello and said she was looking forward to working with them, and she decided to test their skills first. She asked Sojun to spread his arms slightly and freeze in place. Natanya tuned her instrument and was surprised by what she saw, because this guy has the ability to accumulate. But at that moment, everything suddenly changed. Her servants suddenly died from the attack beam. But Natanya shouted at them to stop the enemies. But it was too late, because the shadow appeared, and around his hands right into her chest. Natanya could not even move from her place and continued to leak a huge amount of fluid. Seojun was shocked, and didn't understand how things turned out like this. Shadow just removed his hand from her body and left her to die. Natanya tried to turn to the warrior and ask him for something, but Shadow saw this and shot his beam straight into her head and destroyed her. Covered in blood, Sojun became scared and saw that the enemy was heading straight for him. But he couldn't move from the spot, and at the end he saw only Shadow's hand before his eyes. And when he finally came to, among those who remained alive, including him and the rest of the warriors, he alone was covered in blood. But in front of him stood a bald man who said that all magical abilities were connected with this collar. He thought this place was very strange. After all, he didn't know that he was in the Gehenna prison. The bald man asked the guy if Sojun was calling him, and he said that he was very unlucky. Did he know that? After all, he would end up in a prison built by the powers that be and located 7,000 meters above the ground. Gehenna for his first crime. The bald man walked around and ordered the next prisoner to raise his head. And then Sojun got upset because it shouldn't have been like this. Normal students live happily in such worlds. That's what he thinks. And this shouldn't have happened in his life. And what he wanted was to be brighter and easier than what he was experiencing now. But the most important thing he didn't know was what his life would be like now. Would he really be in prison all his life, until his death? But in the morning, when they came out in front of the cameras, they were wished good morning and called idiots. The girl said that she is the warden of Gehenna, and they can call her warden. But suddenly the overseer said that she just felt like throwing up when she looked at them, and they are truly incredible. And you can see that on their faces there is no remorse, no regret for their sins, none of that. But that's what they are. And she thinks they're a cancer on society. But they better open their eyes and face reality. The warden said that a high school student who was ruining everything around him with his powers, and even a general of the demon army and a crazy vampire seeking revenge. And none of those listed could escape from here. And among them, especially this crazy warrior, who interested her. Seojin was shocked and turned around, not knowing why they were all looking at him like that. And he wondered why she chose him. The warden turned around, became a sweet girl, and told them not to think about crossing her path. Otherwise, who knows, maybe she could kill them. Everyone immediately fell silent, but the overseer turned around and told them all to answer. Everyone immediately answered her that they understood everything. But one of the prisoners decided to stand out and insulted her. The warden, without thinking twice, decided to teach him a lesson and destroyed him with one step. And the overseer said that she felt like she forgot to say something, and the reason she was chosen as overseer was because of her power. And so if they live quietly in Gehenna, then everything will be fine. And maybe. And she doesn't think they'd want to die that easily. And they'll start by admitting the crimes he committed. First warrior Kim Seojun, and then Sojin was taken to the dungeon. And the enemy told him that now that he could hear much better, he would ask him again, and his answer must be only positive. Was it he who killed the second princess? The enemy asked him to call out his crime. The warden was behind the barrier at that moment and said that the warrior did not want to admit his guilt, and she's sure the hallucinations work, but maybe it's because of his willpower? Seojin shouted to the enemy that he was innocent, but suddenly everything changed and he was freed. Everyone was shocked by what happened and didn't know how it happened. Sojin fell to his knees and asked, "What is this?" His fingers grew back, and his ears too, and it must have been a skill. The warden said they tortured him using hallucinations, but she can't believe he just freed himself, and it seems to her that he has an unusual skill, and he has the ability to accumulate. The enemy turned to the overseer and asked for forgiveness, and asked her if she thought it was not only because of him, and maybe it was because the leash was loose, because he needed the hallucinations to work on his brain. Seojun didn't understand and asked, "Torture by hallucinations? They both just started torturing him from day one? Are they crazy? And in this world, human rights do not exist?" The warden replied that in the past there was a race with two horns. They all lived in a small village. It was an ordinary village with a population of 300 people, very quiet. But one day a man from the earth came. He was a warrior, and one warrior passed through this world. And on this day, 275 inhabitants died. And the warrior's skill was called God Mode. It allowed him to use commands like cheats in games. Before she tore off his limbs and left only his head, he said only one thing. "Does the warrior imagine what?" she asked. And he said the word exit. They are earthlings. They treat their world like a toy. And because of this, their world is now chaos. And to kill people, treating it so simply, to rape, justifying it with an attempt to get closer. And wasn't his heart broken when he killed the second princess? And isn't he ashamed? Seojun replied that he didn't kill her. It was a false accusation. What would he gain from this anyway? Why would he kill her? The warden got angry and kicked him, telling him to listen carefully. The most important rule of Gehenna is that the accused admits his crime. Guilty or innocent, it's not their job to uncover the truth. Gehenna is a correctional facility, after all, and it's none of her business whether he's in jail for a reason or not. Their job is to correct and teach him. And welcome to their world. The warden raised her fist and knocked him out with one blow. Seojun was thrown into a dark cell, and he said that he would not see an easy life even in this world. And this world is no different from Earth. The only difference on Earth was that he had family behind him. But here there was no family, no friends, only loneliness. Sojun cried from loneliness and suddenly raised his head to see the second princess in front of him. Seojun couldn't believe his eyes and asked, "How?" The princess asked the warrior if he wanted to be freed from this place. Sojun wondered what was going on and decided that it might be an illusion, but in reality it was too real to be an illusion. He touched the princess's hand and felt it, and then he asked, "Is she alive?" After all, he was sure that she was dead after what he saw. And anyway, although he doesn't understand how she could have ended up here, he's very glad that she came. And he is glad that she is alive. And that means that he is free from false accusation. And he asks her to let him out of here. The princess replied to the warrior that, unfortunately, there was no way to prove his innocence. Seojin was surprised and asked her what she meant. But why couldn't she do it? The princess replied that there were several reasons, but the first was that she was dead. She showed him her true form. Sojun was shocked by what he saw and did not understand how this could happen. But the princess replied that this was the so-called ethereal form, where the soul is the core and the body is mana. People can't see her unless they're on the ground like a warrior, and she doesn't have enough mana to use her skills. But most importantly, does he remember the face of the real criminal? She asked. Sojun thought about it and replied that he didn't remember his face. Even the other 3 warriors didn't remember. It was as if part of the memories had been cut out. The princess was surprised and said that not only did they break into the nation's most important building and kill the princess, but they also escaped, blaming him for everything. And so she doesn't think there's any point in publicly announcing that she's alive, since they have no information about the real culprit. Sojun pulled himself together and asked what he should do. He can't do that, but she asked him if he wanted to run away. What should he do anyway? He will eventually be executed. He is risking his life. He was summoned into this world, then imprisoned and tortured. So let her stop beating around the bush and come right out and say it. Does he have a chance of getting out of here? The princess removed her hand and replied that, in general, she could not answer strictly negatively. There was a way out. Sojun was surprised and asked her what she said. The princess repeated that there was a way out. And this is the exit from the prison at an altitude of 7,000 meters, from which even a person with the ability to shrink has never escaped. The next day, the enemy tortured him again, and Sojun muttered something with his mouth closed. The enemy removed his gag and asked him what he said. Sojun replied that he was the one who killed Princess Netanya and her court magicians. At that moment, the guy felt terrible. And after 2 days of endless torture by hallucinations, he had to confess to a murder he did not commit. The enemy said that he had finally admitted it, and they would soon return to their work. The enemy told Seojun that this person would tell him what awaited him. Amber from the patrol group. Seojun didn't understand what kind of patrol group this was. Amber came up and asked him if he was the one who said he killed the princess. And of course it's funny, but the guy looks much stupider than she heard, and she decided to let him go, because he's uncomfortable. Amber was very kind to him and said that she was pleased to meet him. And probably the guy was too. The enemy told Amber to stop talking to him and send him away already, and show him this on the way. Seojun lowered his head and suddenly saw that his hands were already handcuffed, and Amber grabbed him and started to drag him. Suddenly Seojun asked what was going on. Amber asked him, and why didn't they tell him? He was finished. And the most important thing in Gehenna is the confession of the crime committed by the criminal. And those who came here are scum, first of all. So he didn't understand why he resisted and forced himself to be tortured. Sojun asked, what if he had said from the beginning that he did it? Amber replied that they would have stopped right there. Everyone else did. But of course, the second he confessed, he couldn't take it back. Seojun was shocked and knew there was no turning back. But Amber said that they would forget anyway, because it wouldn't be very nice if the trash started falling out of the bin. And enough of these depressing conversations, maybe they will talk about something else. And although the elders have already said, she is Amber from the patrol group. In fact, the patrol group consists of members of the prison guard with the highest combat skills that are comparable to cheats. She controls the section he'll be in, and that means if he throws a fit, she'll be the one to kill him. Arriving at the place, Amber said that they were here, and she wanted to show him this. And suddenly Seojun got scared and looked at this picture with surprise. The place was completely illuminated with yellow color, and Amber said, "This is what execution in Gehenna means." Seojun asked if these people were being used as batteries. Amber replied that he could call it extraction, drying their mana, extracting skills from bodies, from shells. People are the most important resource here. Prisoners of Gehenna have special skills. This is sufficient reason to imprison them here. And I heard from the captain that he also has a special skill. So you could say that she tells him all this out of the kindness of her heart. And then he remembered the princess, who asked him what he planned to do now. Seojun asked if there was another way. The princess replied that the death sentence was inevitable. Plus, since he was from the earth, he couldn't hire a lawyer either. Seojun continued and said that it was simply impossible to escape. And how could he, an ordinary person, escape from such a prison? The princess thought and said that she would then tell him a story to motivate him. From the moment he stepped on this land, time in his world stopped. Seojun was shocked by what he heard and couldn't believe it. The princess replied that it had been a month since he had arrived here, and so in earthly time a month has passed too. Since in earthly time a month has passed too, wouldn't his relatives start looking for him? Seojun got angry and grabbed her and started shouting that it was she who called him here. The princess asked him, "What is he going to do now? Sit here and do nothing?" And the warrior already knows the answers. Let him give up and go rot in prison, or maybe escape and return to Earth. And if he decides to run away, she will understand him. Seojun calmed down and said that he understood her, and he doesn't trust her at all, but he can escape from this world. The princess told him that it was a wise decision. The next day, the teacher told Amber that that was all for today, and for today he could give her 75 points. Amber asked the teacher if he really thought about killing her. The teacher replied that he did, and therefore will give only 75 points. Amber agreed and thanked for the instructions, but the teacher said that although he had already said this many times, he really liked her foresight skill. And while her body can't keep up with her eyes yet, her only weakness is her ability to focus on only one target during battle. Amber replied that it was true. She had just realized it. The teacher said that therefore she needed to know her strengths and weaknesses. Otherwise, who knows? Even this bear might turn into a sword in a real battle. Amber stood up and asked the captain if he liked teddy bears. Maybe he should buy her more teddy bears for her vacation? The captain replied that he didn't like them. But Amber asked, "Why isn't the overseer here?" The captain replied that he had no idea, and he had heard her superiors calling her. He, too, needed to join them today. The princess found her man and asked, "Does it mean that neither the captain nor the overseer will be here?" The guy asked her if she thought it was a little suspicious. They were called out as soon as the warrior Seojun surrendered, and how the internal affairs of Gehenna become public property. And it seems to him that a rat has penetrated Gehenna. Having been in line, Seojun understood that today was the day he would carry out his escape plan. And it was actually happening. There are 6 guards at the back entrance alone, and maybe 20 people, and all of them are armed. And firearms exist in this world. Seojun was surprised. The princess appeared behind him and replied that it was a standard rifle with a small magical engine. It fired 50 times a minute and so on 19 times. Seojun turned to Natanya and decided to ask her something, but the princess immediately shut him up. The princess told him that no one but him can see her, but he still has to be careful and only listen to her. And in about half an hour, when the check is over, there will be an ambush when they take him to the cell, and a warrior needs to be prepared for that moment. Seojun understood that escaping from prison was not a guarantee, that it was the only way. However, he believes that this is the only way to avoid the death penalty, and so this is his choice. As he was walking into the cell, a worker stopped him and said he would look at Seojun's size. He told him to bend down, and having stuck the instrument between his throat, he said that they would remove the device in 3 minutes. It was needed to measure the strength of his skill and its purpose, and if he gets any closer to the guards, let them kill him immediately. And they immediately led him forward and invited the next prisoner. As he was being led to the cell, Seojun began to get nervous, but suddenly a bright light blinded his eyes. A worker stood in front of him and told Seojun to go to the center, and the princess decided to help him and said that they were testing his skill to make him work on something. She asked the warrior, "He never used his skill, did he? He needs to shout out the name of his skill to activate it, and then imagine that he has another finger and snap it. And now it's time for him to go, and she will wait for him here because there are sensors there." But Seojun remembered that he had a stacking skill, and if he thought about it, he didn't even know how to use it. The voice told him that he was there and stopped right in the center, and he had the accumulation skill, and let him try to use his skill on the mannequin in front of him. Seojun was surprised and didn't know where the dummy came from, but he doesn't even know how strong his skill is. Seojun extended his hand forward and decided to try from this distance. He didn't even understand how to act and shouted his skin accumulation, but nothing happened, and everything around was quiet. The voice asked him why he stood there like a statue, Let him start acting quickly. Seojin tried to show them with his face that this was his first time, and he knows that his skill is not for long distances, and shouting won't help activate it. Seojin walked up to the mannequin and stretched out his hand, imagining that he had another finger. He clicked it, activating it. He was surprised that his hand suddenly began to glow, and he felt that he could see out of the corner of his eye how the list of things shifted. And it seems to have no end. And does that mean the storage is infinite? The voice started laughing and said that he expected something grand. He had never heard of such a skill, but it seems to be just some skill that can only store things. But Seojin was sure that this was a normal inventory, like in games. Usually in manhwas, the main characters have some unimaginable abilities, but there is still something that worries him. In the past, when she watched his skill, Princess Natanya smiled, but here he is now confused, but not disappointed. And maybe because such a skill has never been heard of before. Or maybe he doesn't know something, and there's something about this accumulation skill that he has no idea about. The voice told the warrior to put the dummy back in place, and then they'll finish testing his ability. Seojin asked if he should choose from the list or what. But what should he do? He can't even shout. The voice shouted at him to act faster, but the guy outside the sphere asked what was wrong with him. It wasn't the first time he used his skill, but the girl said no, and she thought it was his first time. The guy was shocked and couldn't believe it, but suddenly the girl knocked the weapon out of his hands and then wounded his leg several times. The boy fell to the ground in pain and started screaming. He asked the girl to stop, but the girl couldn't do it, and completely cut this guy into small pieces with her knife. The other servants asked her what she was doing, and ordered the others to kill her quickly. But the girl was simply merciless about this, and licked the blood on the knife with her tongue. Seojin started to hit the window and asked the princess what happened. He thought that the plan would be carried out after the test. The princess thought about it and decided to guess. But Seojun asked what she meant. The princess replied that she didn't know her. It wasn't part of the plan. The girl was just having fun and destroying all the servants at that moment. 10 minutes later, the guard of the room was enjoying his meal. But the elder came and asked him what he was eating again. The boy replied that he was hungry, but the elder suddenly started coughing and said that he had been cut while he was playing. The guy asked him if he had caught a cold, and it looks like there's some kind of epidemic going on now. But the elder suddenly fell to his knees in front of him and began to cough up a strange liquid. The guy got scared and started calling for help, but he didn't notice how he too was covered, and his eyes became several times smaller. They were unable to cope with such a powerful disease, and both collapsed to the ground like sacks. But the elder was still conscious and ordered the creature to come out. At that moment, a strange creature emerged from his body and turned into a human form. The creature said it felt sick after being in the guy's stinking stomach. "And what's wrong with Doffel? Is he okay?" the creature asked. Doffel replied to his ally that it was empty complaints, and Ipeko was quite purposeful. The creature listened to him and agreed. The girl who exterminated the rest of the guards was at that moment with all the people where the skill research was taking place. She looked around and, having counted all the guards, gave the signal to the strange creature that came out from under her feet. She started moving her fingers and saying that I needed to come in unnoticed and break through. The girl approached the guards and asked for forgiveness, and said that she really needed to go to the toilet. So can they just let her go to the toilet? The guard told her that she looked suspicious. They would look at her first, and then take her to the toilet. The girl was upset and said that she couldn't stand it. The guard was surprised and asked her what she wanted, and in his opinion, she was planning something, and let her kneel immediately. The girl thought about it at that moment. The guard asked her if she didn't hear the order. She closed her eyes and said that she didn't care anymore, and they were exposed. It was time to attack. The guard was surprised, because he did not understand what she wanted to do. But the girl released a huge circle under herself and slowly sucked the guard into it. She immediately felt a surge of enormous power, and even for a moment she was surprised and began to transform into him. But another guard saw all this and started running after her. The girl saw that he was fast, and even if his comrades were killed before his eyes, he still ran after her to attack. She smiled and replied that this is how risking your life is justified. The guard had already prepared himself and decided to attack with his lightning. But the girl saw an object in front of her and thought about how she could get to this collar that suppressed mana. But suddenly, raising her head to the sky, she saw several electric beams that were directed at her. She didn't expect that after such an attack, a huge explosion occurred around her. The guards had already surrounded her at that moment, and they were ready to fire bullets at full speed, expecting all the dust to clear and for them to catch her. But the girl showed herself and said it was exciting. The guards, seeing this, could no longer stop and fired all the bullets straight at her, but in the end they saw that nothing worked. After all, she picked up an object that suppressed mana. The girl said it was really amazing. She came off in a millisecond. The guard was thinking at that moment, what is that on her? And he sees how the shining one is circling around her. And even the space is deformed. He immediately ordered the others to retreat. But the guy's face suddenly began to twist, and he shouted at the end that she was going to shoot. At this moment, the girl accumulated strength within herself and, stretching out her hands, applied the cleansing technique. Having fired the entire clip at full force, she simply tore them into small pieces. Taking the knife in her hands, she said that now it was time to look for Kim Sojun. But she didn't stop there. On the way to the guy, she had problems and destroyed them all to the last one. Sitting down next to the bodies, she said that she was very tired and asked how many there were. And why didn't the creature help her? The creature replied that someone had to watch too. At that moment, Sojun was thinking, who are these people? He knows they are not part of Natanya's plan. But in any case, one thing is clear to him. There is not one but two sides who want to get him out, free him from false accusations and prison. But the princess saw at that moment that this situation did not seem so good to her. The girl told the boy not to be afraid and to come over. They were there to get him out, and she doesn't bite. The princess also told the warrior that they would go after them first. The girl was delighted and replied that there was no need to worry so much in her presence. The creature shouted to Ipeko that they had no time for flirting. They had to leave in 3 minutes. Ipeko replied that she knew and asked him who he took her for. And anyway, that's it. And she hopes the guy will quietly follow her. Seojun walked through the corpses, and it all seemed twisted to him. Ipeko, seeing his face, asked the guy, what is it about some corpses that makes him shudder? Sojun was surprised and asked, what corpses? At that moment he assumed that it was like some page from Guro's site. She doesn't understand it. And maybe he should go back. Ipeko extended her hand and said that her mother used to do this when she was little. Have the boy close his eyes, take her hand, and follow her. And wouldn't it be a little easier that way? Seojun thought about it and told her that she was wrong. After all, he was scared shitless. The creature screamed at Ipeko that she was a fool and every second was precious, but she was still playing. But looking away, he told Amber not to come any closer either. Amber replied that she didn't even touch his shadow. And how did he guess? The creature said that he could sense all the shadows around him, and she underestimates other people's skills. Amber replied that it was just her first time encountering something like this. The creature suddenly turned around and decided to attack her. But Amber actually already understood that the movement of his magic was clear, and this blow was not real. And the shadow behind her back, that's where the truth is. And the body is just a vessel. And it's not real either. Amber pulled out her knife and said that his real body was the shadows on the floor. The creature shouted to Ipeko that the enemy has the skilled demonic eye, and she sees the movements of someone else's mana. Amber didn't stop there and, waving her weapon, simply destroyed the creature, catching it due to its own stupidity. Amber was very happy after this and said that this is how you need to deal with them. And it looks like there's only one attacker left to deal with. They looked at each other for a long time, and Ipeko immediately remembered that it was that girl. Amber said that she honestly didn't understand. From what they could tell, it was the work of a traitor inside Gehenna. Then who is this uninvited guest? Or is it something else? There are several groups trying to rescue Seojun. What is the reason for them to do this? She asked. The princess understood that if a person is not from the earth, he will not be able to see her. She can see her through the magical distortion. And she has a demonic eye skill, and it's starting to piss her off. Amber said that they would forget about Sojun for a while first, and immediately attacked Ipeko. Ipeko saw that she was striking at such an angle that it was difficult to dodge. This is because she is half snake. Amber didn't stop there and continued to attack. But the girl was also one of the fast ones and was able to dodge. Amber was very angry, and each of her blows was so strong and unexpected that the warrior would not be able to react. But she saw that her attack didn't reach. And it's a defense skill, but even if it is, it's related to spatial manipulation. And Ipeko noticed that the snake's pace was accelerating. She could foresee its steps with her demonic eye. But Sojun decided to have some fun too, and using his skill he saw that all his fragments were thrown away. And it was so fast that they were not human. The princess told the warrior that force against technology incredible. And it's like a reference book for a warrior, where he can get acquainted with skills and magic. A warrior should do this too. And she thinks we can call it preliminary training. And it needs to be finished in 2 minutes before Gehenna reinforcements arrive. Ipeko asked the girl if she had no mana left. But Amber was so strong that she had a plan in reserve. Having jumped to attack the enemy, she smiled at the last moment and began to reflect all the shots. Ipeko realized that she sees everything. And the distortion of space is really a skill distortion of space. Ipeko started running away and said that she was using up mana at a crazy rate. It won't take long to kick the bucket. She uses mana very effectively and has great power. At that moment, Amber raised her huge sword of bloody energy and brought it down straight on Ipeko. Seojin was so surprised that it was as if the force had cut the room into 2 parts. He asked what these abnormal strikes were. And first of all, he remembered Natanya's words. While Amber from the mobile team performs a series, Ipeko will use magic and skills to a minimum. Seojin asked if this was an innate difference in strength. The princess replied that they also had a difference in skill types. Usually, spatial skills take a lot of mana, but the snake girl's demonic eye skill consumes almost no mana. And besides, Sojun realized that unlike Amber, who had to last 1 fight, he and Ipeko still had to get out of Gehenna. And they are at a huge disadvantage. Sojun said he would join too, and let her tell you how to control the skill. The princess asked the warrior if he had any problems with logic. He hadn't even learned how to release mana yet. Seojin replied that he has a storage skill. He knows that it's not just inventory. But the princess said that as a result of this battle, he would either run away or bury himself. Did he really want to get his hands dirty? Seojun replied that whether he liked it or not, he was already in the middle of things. And now there is nothing to do. He has no choice but to decide. The princess said that detection skills, especially the demonic eye, allow one to see only mana for the rest of one's life. And everything in this world, even objects, contain a little bit of mana. And those who possess the demonic eye can see it. And suddenly Amber realized that the guys want to wear her out. She covers her attacks with weak firepower. And this skill, she can't distort objects with it. Amber became very angry, and having closed the distance, she began to swing her sword with great force. Ipeko did not expect such pressure from her, and at the last moment stopped her attack. But she received a ricochet wound to the shoulder, without even expecting it. Amber stepped back and asked the enemy if this was her limit. And if so, she used her energy and told the enemy that it was time for her to die. But Ipeko smiled and understood that the biggest advantage and disadvantage of the demonic eye is that it sees everything at once. And the brain has to absorb a huge amount of information, which can interfere in combat and everyday life. And therefore, the owners of the demonic eye personally impose restrictions on it. Ipeko used her abilities and directed a huge circle of rock attacks at her. Amber was surprised and asked what she was going to do. Didn't she know that such projectiles were useless? And her demonic eye allows her to read orbits. And raising her sword, she threatened that she would be finished. But Ipeko replied that for the sake of the fight, she had kept her reading information to a minimum. And in fact, she does not see the mana of ordinary objects. And at that moment, the stones fell on Amber's back. Ipeko said that she didn't throw stones at her, but at the weak part of the ceiling, and the part under which they fought. Amber was under a barrage of stones and was trying to get out. But the princess asked the warrior if he still thought he could help her with anything. Seojun replied that he didn't, but he would try. After all, once Amber fell once, the restrictions on her demon eye would be lifted. And it won't be possible to attack her again either. A large amount of information will start to distract her in battle. But minimal restrictions will remain, a way to deal with someone out of sight. But is there a weak link in the demonic eye that reads everything? Amber suddenly began to mutter that she admits that she has more combat experience and instincts than her. She lost, and she has some broken bones and a hole in her stomach. But she still has a few tricks left. Ipeko was shocked when she saw her face. Amber just raised her head and used skill overload. The energy was so strong and fast that Amber simply flew out from under the rocks and attacked the enemy. She knew that overloading a skill literally meant taking on a huge load and increasing the effectiveness of the skill. Overloading the demonic eye means that the brain will work at its lowest power. But after that, the vision will expand many times over. Ipeko knew in her head that there were about 15 seconds left. With her current field of vision, she could see a little into the future. Amber began to strike with her fists and beat her enemy until his last breath. But Ipeko managed to react and put her defense against her. But Amber did not stop there and tried to strike with her legs. But Ipeko didn't have time to react and received a strong blow, and the snake simply came up from behind and continued to beat her. Amber also understood that she had 10 more seconds left, and after the overload subsided, she would lose her sight for some time. Ipeko knew she had to do the overload too, but then they wouldn't be able to cope with what was coming next. She decided to cheer up a little too, and attacked the enemy. But Amber just managed to react and reflected. But something unexpected happened that threw them in different directions, and Ipeko was glad that she reflexively expanded the distortion of space. But the damage was still very big. She stepped aside and decided that she needed to catch her breath a little. But Amber didn't stop there and started chasing her to finally finish her off. Amber said she saw the shape and direction of the spatial distortion. Even the angle she would fly at, it was easy. And suddenly she saw before her eyes that she had already won. But then Sojun came and used his skill. Amber immediately stopped in her tracks and a strange iron robot came out of her body. Sojun said that when you retrieve an item saved by a skill, the item in the same place disappears. And he realized something. The princess was also curious about what he was thinking. That's why he was so quiet all this time. She knew that the weak point of the demon eye and this goal setting, the snake girl gave preference to the cat girl and excluded him from her field of vision. And he didn't catch her eye. The princess said that the warrior adapted faster than expected. Amber said at the end that she understood, and the weak point of the demonic eye, she could not cope with it, and she failed. Amber simply couldn't stand after such words and fell to the ground like a dead body. Seojun looked at her with his gaze, in which the energy was right in his eye. He knew he had killed someone, and it was her choice. The moment he chose to run, the path ahead of him became bloody. And he must do anything to return to Earth, and to escape from this world. Ipeko looked at it and said that it seemed there were no more guards left. They would be able to leave through the entrance she came from. Ipeko saw the guy's gaze and asked if something was bothering him. Sojun replied that no, he was just picking up his gun. But Ipeko said she released the other prisoners before entering the testing room. They are now occupied with the others, most likely. And they, meanwhile, will pass through the road to retreat. Sojun asked her, and who are they actually? Why are they risking their lives to save him? Ipeko replied that she couldn't say, but to them he was just a key. Sojun was surprised and asked, what key? The girl answered that yes, there was something very important, locked away from them, and only he could help them open it. Sojun looked straight at the princess with his gaze, not knowing what kind of key it was. Suddenly Ipeko turned to the warrior. Sojun came to his senses and replied that he was listening. Ipeko said that in any case the corridors on this floor were likely in complete chaos, so they need to get out another way, and the only way is to go up. Ipeko hugged him and told him to hold on tight, and she lifted him straight up to the second floor. But at the last moment, Sojun also participated, and using his fist, he destroyed the window that was blocking their exit. Ipeko was delighted and told the warrior that he was getting the hang of his new skill. And that was really cool. Seojun replied that he had used it a couple of times, so he was more or less used to it. But Ipeko told him not to relax just because they were on the top floor. 5 minutes had already passed, so there would be armed guards on the upper floors too. And he ordered him to run after her, and when they would break through the barriers. But the princess decided to leave them, and immediately disappeared. But Seojun saw this, and did not understand why she did this. He decided to stop and ask her. But Ipeko grabbed his clothes and asked him what he was doing. She told him not to stop, because they will be disconnected from the area where the riot is happening. If he disconnects, neither she nor he will be able to get out. Seojun asked her what she was talking about. Ipeko replied that it was a skill that affected time and space. Gehenna's mobile patrols also had such skills. At that moment, the boys were fighting with the enemies and trying to destroy them. But the girl fired several bullets at them, but they were easily repelled. The boy was surprised and asked why it was so gloomy here. But his servants told him that all the guards had finished their evolution. The guy asked the guys, "Is it time to move to Gramo Harbor?" It was because of them, the guys, that this mess happened. If they continue like this, there will be no choice but to overload the skill. The guy saw a strange creature in front of him, and using a square barrier, he simply protected himself from the attack. But then he told the guards that they should guard him better. After all, the consequences of the overload would soon be upon him. And the spatial detachment operation is complete. Are they both working well there? He asked. The ally answered the chief that they too had finished everything, and let him organize a call for bodies. But could it be a coincidence? Asked the ally. Both the warden and the commander were not present when the incident occurred. The guy asked, just a coincidence? No, they were betting on it 100%. The ally said that the rumors are true. Is this really the work of traitors? Cecilia, what about the location of the other escaped criminals? Cecilia answered, he immediately where the criminals are, and an open public recreation area. But of course it's strange. A bunch of different locations. It could be skill. Someone is confusing the information. But the boys fell into a trap where the guards stood in front of them. But Seojun said that they need to avoid a fight. Ipeko replied that she had used too much mana earlier. Seojun asked what they should do now. Ipeko replied that first, if he made a hole in the wall, then he could use the skill to escape. One of the guards said it was Ipeko, and Doffel cleared all the corridors. Everyone was surprised, and Ipeko asked, was it Doffel? Sojun asked the same. What happened? Ipeko replied that it was her colleague. He could control infected targets all day long. The guards began to say that all the corridors leading to the exit had been cleared, and they're also confusing the information about Kim Seojun's whereabouts. And let them hurry. They need to be there in 2 minutes. But suddenly, leaving, the guard told Ipeko that this was what she asked him for. Sojun asked what it was. Ipeko replied that it was a magical device, to evade the automatic fire of Gehenna, and Seojun told him to hide this item for now. The guy immediately used his eye and hid it. And suddenly, Ipeko entered the room and said that right above this place. They opened a secret exit and went out to the top floor. Ipeko said it was a hovercraft due to Gehenna's enormous size and location in the airspace. And for support, every building has such a vessel on the top floor. This is the only way out of Gehenna. And naturally, other prisoners can't get in here. Seojun already thought that they would finally get out of here. Get out of this damn prison. But then he wondered, what would happen to Netanya? Why did she leave so suddenly? But suddenly a man came up to them and said that everything was clear, and they controlled the minds of the guards. Like a virus, it spreads and becomes active after some time. And that's why reliable information has been so difficult to obtain. And now he will destroy them, and it would be necessary to offer the warden to install a magical device of mental barrier. Ipeko immediately became scared and shouted to the warrior, but the stranger used his technique and attacked the guy right in the head. But Ipeko saw it all differently, and time was on his side. Sojun activated his eye and blocked the attack. The stranger was shocked, because he also did not expect such a turn of events, and he told him that it was he with the storage skill. And of course it's incredible, because he was able to save even the projectile flying at him. Suddenly, Seojun felt sweat pouring down his face, and suddenly, halfway through, she froze. But the stranger looked and said that everything was correct. He could freeze and kill anyone in his path. Earlier, the stranger approached Caleb and said that he was Isaac from the second floor. Caleb asked him if he was responsible for the lower floors. Let him continue talking. Isaac said he heard Caleb torture the warrior. The guy told him that it happened. And one day, he read the report on Kim Seojun. There is something strange about it. He killed Princess Netanya and the palace technicians in the blink of an eye. But isn't it strange that no one remembers this moment? Moreover, according to Seojun's statement, there was someone else there. Caleb replied that there is strong evidence that Kim Seojun is a criminal. And these are Mana's traces. Mana is like an unforgeable fingerprint. Everyone has a different color and wavelength. The traces of Mana in the goddess's hourglass matched Kim Seojun's traces. So he's just a crazy killer talking nonsense. And if that weren't the case, would they have assigned him here? Isaac replied that he understood, and the guy was just a regular killer. And so Isaac met him face to face and immediately decided to test him with his attacks. But Seojun wasn't scared this time and easily repelled the attack. But he saw that there was another attack under that attack. And before he could reflect it, he thought it wouldn't harm him, but it turned out to be an explosion. Ipeko immediately approached him and asked if he was okay, and she felt that he was cold as ice. At that moment, Part of Sojin's face simply froze, and even his eye, unable to withstand such a load, exploded. Isaac said he could kill him without even touching him, and then he attacked them together. But Ipeko, in order to save the guy, used her defense in response, and the attack was simply reflected. But she didn't fight him any further and used the portal to disappear. Isaac asked, "Is this some kind of conspiracy of the Empire or Kingdom?" Absurd, of course. Gehenna is supposed to be neutral territory. And suddenly, he decided to act differently, and pulling out exploding arrows around himself, he aimed one of them straight at the ship, saying that they can't leave anyway. But Seojun understood that the Empire's kingdom, they want to free him. Of course, this is ridiculous and funny. Ipeko turned to him and said that she needed to save some mana just in case, so she couldn't use her skill more than she was supposed to. And from this moment on, they must travel without using mana to get to a certain place. She needs to have a good rest. And fighting the mobile group twice alone, that wasn't part of the plan. But Sojun didn't know if Netanya had abandoned him or run away, but now he had to fight in Ipeko's place. But the question before him is different. Can he win? But at that moment, the guards unexpectedly attacked Isaac and grabbed him. And Isaac was a little shocked and asked them if they really thought they could win with numbers alone. The guards already said that non-magical transportation will begin now. It is already charged. Isaac loaded another arrow and asked the enemy if they thought he would miss something like that. At that moment, Ipeko and the warrior were boarding the ship. But the guards did not allow him to shoot, and everyone surrounded him. But the attack was unfortunately released. It was aimed straight at Ipeko's head. Sojun managed to react quickly and protected it with his hand, reflecting the arrow. Isaac was very angry after this, because all the guards just blocked him. And finally he asked the warrior, does he think he can just run away? Does he think this is all for his own good? Because in reality, whoever it is, a kingdom or an empire, they just want to use him. It doesn't matter which side he chooses. His future will still be hell. Seojun got angry and shouted that he didn't care. He just wanted to get out of here. And they're all torturing people here. Suddenly, Ipeko turned to him, but seeing his gaze, she simply fell silent. And Seojun said that this world would be a better place if it weren't for this. Isaac called the guy an Earthman and asked if that was what he was saying, considering he killed Princess Netanya. Seojun replied that he didn't kill her. Why don't they listen to him? Ipeko got tired and told the guy that the enemy was just stalling for time, and he should be calm. It's time to get out of here. As soon as he boarded the ship, Seojun felt calm, but Ipeko said she thought the boy felt he had been treated unfairly, and she's here on assignment. She can't say much. But she wanted to tell him that where they were going, they couldn't rely on things like that. And she doesn't know how comfortable the earth is, but let him keep his mind clear. Always stay calm and collected. It is better to kill than to be killed. Using skills and magic in battle is the basis. All this running, all this effort, only to have him killed like a key. It hurts her to watch. The guard shouted at Ipeko to fly up, because the operation had been a success. But Isaac used the second technique, and, having destroyed them all, said that he was asking for forgiveness. Isaac didn't want to let them go just like that, because he had his own task, and he immediately headed towards the ship. Ipeko was upset and said that she didn't mean to use overload here, but Isaac was about to touch the ship. But Ipeko used the skill overload technique. Isaac was shocked as the ship began to evaporate right in front of him. At first he thought it was a distortion, but then he realized that this was something else. She overloaded the skill. And this is his last move. Isaac immediately pulled out his gargoyle and fired straight at the ship. But Ipeko was already wounded and fell to the ground. She told the boy that she had set up an autopilot. It would lead them out of Gehenna. And let him bring out the magic item he saved, and they don't have time. Ipeko immediately passed out and fell to the ground. Seojun looked up and saw Isaac standing on the ship. He told the boy that the side effects had finally worked. Seojun was so angry that even from his face it was clear that he was ready to blow up everything in his path. Isaac said that skill overload is not just about overloading the skill itself. The more power, the more mana is used. Depending on the skill, there may be other costs besides mana. And being forced to use them when there is not enough mana can be life-threatening. And those who use this method must be prepared for increased risk. And if you don't use it right, there can be a backlash. Just like now. Isaac didn't stop and started destroying the glass of the ship. Seojun was a little shocked by this, and when he saw that the glass was broken, he became even more scared and started running away. But Sojun decided not to leave his partner, and decided to use his technique on her. But he was surprised that the accumulation skill did not work. And he realized that he could not save living beings. And immediately realized that this is also a skill limitation, and now he has no choice. Seojun picked up Ipeko and started dragging her around, and he saw that there was a room of parachutes in front of him, and he decided to do it no matter what. But Isaac still got his way and broke the ship's glass. Entering inside, he thought, should he turn back to Gehenna? But he saw that the Gehenna automaton was not working. Even such sophisticated magical devices were brought. And anyway, all he is a worthless hero, and he thinks he can handle it alone. Isaac went down to the lower floor and looked around and saw something strange in the corner. Without thinking twice, he decided to attack the place right away. But in fact, there were weapons lying there. But suddenly, in a moment, everything changed, and someone attacked him from below. Isaac felt that he was hiding under the stairs. He retreated a considerable distance and attacked. But Sojun appeared from the other side and was ready to shoot. He didn't even flinch after his first shot, and he hit Isaac right in the head. But Isaac was immediately on his feet after that, and he knew that even when the guy had shot so close, he had only hit twice. And the guy wasn't as good as he thought. Isaac was wounded and told the guy he underestimated him. He thought the guy could just hide and take things out, and he fights better than he expected, and he was made to look like a fool. Sojun didn't stop there and immediately prepared to shoot. But Isaac was already prepared, and with the help of his powers, he held out several boxes in front of him for protection. Nothing could stop them. After all, they were ready to fight each other until their last breath. Seojun was already tired and felt that shooting was always so difficult. But Isaac told him to throw away his gun and come into the room. And maybe they could talk to him, the enemy asked. Isaac was in the room with Ipeko at that moment, and he said that he guessed where his friend was hiding. There is nowhere to hide for a couple of seconds in such a small place except here, and let him throw his gun away from the engine room and enter the room, and if he moves wrong, he will kill him immediately. Sojun smiled and asked the enemy if he was sure, and if it weren't for that woman. Isaac replied that it would be more difficult. Isn't she the only one who knows the whole plan? Seojun asked. So what? Isaac thought about it and suggested that they do it this way. He would delay the day of his execution as much as possible. And her information is important. It will help Gehenna. If the guy is lucky, he can avoid execution. And his plan had already failed. So what? The guy doesn't agree to this? Sojun thought and immediately threw his weapon to the side, raising his hands to the sky. Isaac said fine. He too wanted to end things as peacefully as possible. And now he has to raise his hands and slowly get on his knees. And if he tries to do anything, the deal is off. And Seojun needs to surrender peacefully. But the boy said that he has no intention of doing anything to this world. He just wants to go back to his own. That's all. Seojun couldn't hold back his emotions and attacked the enemy with his energy. Isaac was shocked and didn't understand how this happened. And he asked the guy what he was doing. Sojun simply couldn't contain himself and was ready to destroy him into small pieces. But he told the enemy directly that he was stopping negotiations. And Isaac should look at it from the other side. Isaac saw that he was in a hopeless situation and was thinking the guy chose to just give up and die. But after looking closely, he realized that this was definitely not the case. He's just playing. He's put his life on the line. He's put everything on the slightest chance of survival. But he also has a chance to get out. And he decided to use his trump card. Seojun was surprised at the moment and felt a strange release of mana. Isaac took advantage of this and found the guy. He began to strike hard with his fists. But Seojun did not have time to react and received injuries. Isaac knew that even though he hadn't used it yet, he could change gravity. If it came to that, he would need to use mana burst. And the only sure way for him to use a parachute is from the pilot's cabin. And the guy plans to escape with his friend by parachute. Although they are slowed down by gravity and auxiliary engines, there is still a minute left before they hit the ground. And considering the minimum altitude for using a parachute, Sojun did not run away and decided to finish off the enemy. Isaac asked the guy if he was going all the way, but Sojun didn't answer him and started chasing him. He used his archery attack ability, but Isaac managed to dodge after that. But Seojun saw that the enemy had already prepared a dart to attack, and he used the technique of appearing buildings, realizing that it was too close. As he expected, the enemy would not grab the dart itself, but would choose an object to block it. Isaac decided to act differently, and having destroyed the object, he came very close to the guy. Sojun didn't even expect such a turn of events, and didn't even have time to react to the enemy's attack. The blow was so imperceptible that Sojun couldn't even stay on his feet and fell to the ground. Isaac felt pain and said that he couldn't hit that hard with the wound in his hand. Sojun thought that if only he could use Mana Burst, but he can't do anything about it. He needs to face reality and do what he can. Isaac showed him an ice dart and said he would finish him off just outside his reach, and Sojun was trying to just come up with a plan at that moment. But the enemy said that the guy would eventually let his guard down, and suddenly seeing the arrow in front of him, Sojun thought that there was only one way out. He accurately blocked his skill using his own. And even in the past, the same thing happened. He already has the answer. If he can keep the skill, he can get it back. Sojun raised his huge finger up and began to take his skill back into his body. In that moment, the guy dodged the dart and made her turn around and head towards the enemy. Sojun then sighed and said that he did it. And standing up, he decided that in any case, he won with his own strength. Looking around, he saw that Ipeko had come to her senses. And she said that she had already set up the parachute. And she feels like she'll just be a burden now. Sojun says it's okay, and they just need to get out of here. At that moment, Sojun felt determined, and he said that he would break through the wall. At that moment, he deliberately ignored a couple of circumstances. The first was why Netanya was only in the ethereal state. Second, why did Netanya disappear in the middle of the escape? He can justify himself by being busy and escaping from prison. And he can come up with excuses, but in any case, the outcome will not change. And this is the result of his choice. And suddenly, in a moment, everything changed. And Ipeko came under attack, which she was unable to dodge. The princess told her man that the hero had indeed defeated the mobile group. Everything was as he said. And Shiola asked, "Isn't it time to move on?" Sojun was in shock at this moment and didn't even know how he let this happen. The princess told the hero that it wouldn't work. Hadn't he been taught that as a child? You shouldn't go with strangers. Sojun reacted sharply and took off his clothes and decided to apply it to the wound. But the liquid from the girl's body just splashed out. The princess told him to just keep her clothes without taking them off, and she immediately took hers off so she wouldn't bleed out. She's starting to get used to her storage skill. Sheol said that was all. His skill was terribly limited, and he was very pathetic. Sheol immediately grabbed the warrior by the head and put him on the ground, and told the guy that the storage skill is all he has. At this moment, Sojun was thinking, what's going on? He didn't see a single movement. The princess turned to Sheol and said it was getting dangerous. Sheol said he had forgotten, and they almost crashed, and he saved the Baikama fuel. Sojun didn't understand what was going on and asked, what other skill? But suddenly the ship lost its balance and sharply headed downwards through the sky. Sojun hit his head and felt like he was going to throw up. And he can't tell enemies from comrades. Sojun asked if he's the only one with that skill. The princess replied that it was the only key. In any case, she would not immediately reveal all the information about this thief cat. She asked Sheol if he had really killed her. Sheol replied that he had not killed her, but the injury was fatal, and in 1 or 2 minutes she will die from blood loss. Sojun asked them, what is this? And what is Netanya trying to achieve? Can she send him back to Earth? The princess replied that her goals and principles were no different from his. He could call it their common destiny. Sojun said he couldn't believe it. He still had darts left, and now he would shoot and kill those two. He immediately used his ability, but something went wrong and Sheol blocked it. And then Sojun realized that even without a millisecond's delay, the moment he pulled out the dart, he immediately erased it with the rope, as if he knew this would happen. The princess told the hero to stop resisting. There was no reason to fight, and even told Sheol to calm down, and there was no need to stress so much because of working with an important key. Sheol replied that he would try, but he wouldn't promise anything. Sojun realized that this guy Sheol and he, their accumulation skills don't work on each other, and now then he has only one way out. Sojun went to the gun and immediately shot Sheol, but Sheol stood his ground and said that the guy's idea was not bad, but he didn't have enough experience. Sheol immediately used his defense and placed a huge concrete cabinet in front of him, but Sojun decided that this was already a success, and his field of vision was already limited, and now he won't be able to see from which angle he will shoot. Sheol said that he will say again, and he lacks experience. But Seojun didn't see that the attack was blocked, and the attack was reflected back at him. Sheol said it looked like the mana engine in the cannon exploded. The pieces of it sure hurt. And now, he probably noticed, he didn't have just one skill. Sojun thought that this man wasn't from Gehenna. Netanya sees, so he's from Earth too. And such an insurmountable difference in skills. And if he is also a hero, like him. How many years has he been flying in these clouds? The princess said that Sheola's skill is copying. He has already copied the accumulation skill. However, because the accumulation skill is special, there are some copying restrictions, and the original is needed, and she will repeat it again and again. Their goals are the same. Seojun began to feel determined, and at that moment, he experienced déjà vu again and again, and fear, helplessness were familiar to him. The skill of copying other people's skills and his skill was also copied. And only one person can do this. After all, the effect of the skill, the method of its use. But why didn't he understand this before? And the criminal who got him into Gehenna? It all started from that moment. Sheol told the warrior that he was finally at the starting point, and he felt like an inexperienced idiot. But suddenly Sheol activated his beam and directed it straight at the girl. But Seojun saw this and immediately became worried. Ipeko said that this was definitely the end for her. This was a fatal wound, and before her eyes flashed memories that she had managed to forget. This is what is called life flashed before her eyes, and at that moment, seeing the orders in front of her, she said that she felt she would not be able to carry them out, and she doesn't have time to review her life. She needs to think while her brain is working, and perhaps their last enemy is the opposition group on the other side. It must be the Royal Alliance. And where exactly were they hiding? They chose some random ship in such a dire situation. Ipeko began to wonder where, when, and how they had chosen this vessel, and why had they entered alone. Sojun was badly injured after his shot, and Sheol asked the boy if he understood yet, and he has more than one skill. But Ipeko understood that foresight, a skill, is the ability to see the future. They saw the ship they were going to board, and they hid under the cargo hold. They were just pawns in a predetermined future. Ipeko grabbed the weapon and decided that losing was inevitable. She had long ago accepted her fate. But she would save Kim Seojun. She would play until the end. Seojun started to act, but Sheol came very close to him and lifted him into the sky by his neck. And Seojun realized that this enemy just shut him up. But why did it happen like that? But at that moment, Ipeko still shot and hit the enemy's hand. But Sheol told her it would be easier to just wait for her death hour in silence. But Ipeko used skill reset, and this is his last attempt to resist. But Ipeko replied that if she had already lost, she could hinder them a little. Suddenly Sheol's hand began to not move, because a system error had occurred. The princess asked him what he was doing. Let him quickly kill the stray cat and protect the hero. But Sheol told her that it was enough and it was time to leave. After all, the self-destruction would begin in 15 seconds. Ipeko was ready to explode and give her life for the warrior. But Sheol said that there were 6 seconds left before teleportation would become impossible, and he will get stuck in it. The princess asked him, did he cause the skill to reset? She took her man with her and said that they would see the hero next time. At that moment, Ipeko thought that she had always wanted to see the hero. She had admired him since childhood. And the only one who can save this rotten world, he is a real hero, so the hero must now save the world. At last, she was able to tell him her wish. Ipeko gave her life for the hero so that he could fulfill her request, and exploded along with the ship. At this point in the interview, the chief said that it was now time to move on to the next topic. But having received the information, he said that there had been an escape in Gehenna. And how would they cope with that? He asked the warden. Gehenna, the impregnable heavenly fortress from which no one had ever escaped. And losing such a status is a big responsibility. But one of those present did not like it, and shouted at him not to talk nonsense. He called a pointless meeting when they were so busy and didn't let them do anything. And what is this? The boss wants them to finish him off because he's sick? The old man answered the warden that he was worried about their caretaker. Is he in his right mind? The warden replied that even though he was from the earth, he could be trusted. And the old man decided that they would end the hearing there. And when he looks at them, he feels like he's aged 10 years. And soon, the plan to capture the escapee will be carried out. The hero's party will also be included, and in any case, someone will have to take responsibility. The matron got very angry and showed it with her foot. She said it was all planned from the beginning. They were just using them as scapegoats. The assistant sat down at the table and replied that he was fed up with both the imperial and royal alliances. When would they unite and stop fighting for their own interests? And first wars with demons, now people fight each other. The warden replied that all this was planned. Their exclusion from Gehenna, and Kim Seojin's escape too. They need to sort this out first. They'll set up a meeting with the leaders and make sure that the entire strike team from the 6th floor is present. They must find Kim Seojin. But when they arrived in Gehenna, they saw how things were. People were shouting at each other and asking for bandages to tie up the wounded. The chief said that 47 people were killed, 58 were wounded, another 120 with minor wounds and concussion, and 2 more from this mobile group died. The warden said that the families of the dead and wounded will be discussed until the next meeting, and the most important question now is how they were able to break through the security in Gehenna. The testing room has a special system to prevent magic leaks. So how did they bypass it and use skills? Apart from the tube in the center of the testing room, there is no other place where you can use magic. And all the magic ends with a small flash when you try to use it. And that's why the guards in this room are armed with magical weapons. And first, they need to establish a time paradigm based on their data. The guy replied that first the Ipeco attackers with the distortion skill, then the devil with the shadow skill and the imaged ones. First, a person with the infection skill was in contact with a guard from Gehenna, and perhaps their target was the guards who were on vacation. After that, the shadow figured out the location of those guards who were on vacation, and it seemed that they were in a place without proper privacy, and they need to figure out the location of staff who are on vacation. They told him that it was difficult, and moreover, if we speak realistically, then control of all officers. The warden told everyone to be quiet, and asked what happened next. After this, they returned to Gehenna and underwent physical and mental tests. However, given the possible circumstances, it can be suggested that they contained the shadow skill in their internal organs. The warden suddenly stood up and said, "This is it, and that's it." They used the infection skill to disarm those in the testing room, and they controlled the guards and turned off the system. They really planned it all, and now she understands that they want to start a war again. The Empire and the Kingdom are definitely out of their minds. The warden asked the mobile group what they thought. At this point, the mobile rest group did not even question how it all happened. The guy from the 6th floor mobile team, Aaron, asked that it was obvious. Wasn't this the work of the Empire? Caleb told him that he agreed with him. But Siren from the mobile group thought and said nothing. But Cecilia said she thought it was a kingdom. Don't they want to steal the key from the Empire? Zetra also replied that he supported Cecilia. But Aaron said that he apologized for his words, but shouldn't they keep an eye on the escapees? The warden said they were right. The order had already been given. But suddenly the assistant stood up and said he had found out the approximate location. And 3 hours ago, they were within 8 kilometers of Gehenna, and he will kill him. And Kim Seojun, that's just a monster who killed his colleague, and he'll tear him to pieces. The guy asked the captain of the mobile group, Lee Taehyung, if he was going to catch him himself. Taehyung said yes. The warden said she couldn't allow it. They'd already lost 2 members of the mobile team, and she felt it was inevitable. Lee was surprised and asked what was wrong. The warden told Isaac that he wasn't that good at fighting. Amber was a newbie, and they didn't have a chance. They know it too. Their job involves situations like this, and it was Amber and Isaac's turn. Lee thought and told Siren and Momi to handle it, and let them help the group of heroes. Momi replied that it was so boring, but she had to avenge her colleague. But when she found herself in a quiet place, the princess said she needed an explanation. Why does he make decisions himself? He didn't even finish with the cat and left the hero there. And what's more, why did their operation coincide with the Imperial one? Sheol replied that it was because they had to do so. The princess was surprised and asked, "What?" Sheol replied that as she already knew, to open it, 2 keys were needed. The Sword of Light and the energy of the Chosen One. The last thing is something they can hardly get. Kim Seojin has to do it himself. Reload the storage skill. The princess said it was decided before the summoning. They decided if it didn't work, they would squeeze the skill out of him and force him to reboot. Sheol replied that Seojun could reset in another way. The princess told him that he had convinced her, but she would let the situation go. But let Sheol not forget that in order to solve his problem, he must achieve his goal. He wants to return to Earth, right? Sheol told her that she was touching his wound and that she didn't need to be so sensitive. Kim Seojun was safe and sound. Sojun came to his senses at that moment and opened his eyes. He didn't understand where he was and why he was tied up. But suddenly the curtain opened in front of him and the doctor and his patient entered. The doctor asked the stranger if he was awake yet, and asked Sojun if he could see poorly. Seojun wondered who these people were. Was he in Gehenna or in a hospital? And when he tried to reach out his hand, he saw that he was tied up. And we need to attack first and catch them off guard. We need to hurry and get out of here. The subordinate said that there was something strange with the guy's eye, and it seemed like he had a lot of complaints. The doctor answered him that he had told him not to tie up the guy. But the subordinate said no, and they couldn't hold the earthling just like that. But Sojun used his abilities and used lightning to break the ropes on his hands. He didn't stop there and tore all the ropes on his body. And then he decided to run away. The doctor told his subordinate to stand still and he would take care of it himself. Seojun ran out of the room and thought, what happened? And where is he anyway? And the last thing he remembers is how the energy around them exploded, and he found himself in a different place, one he had never been to before. But because of fear, he decided to run away from here. But the doctor used his abilities and caught up with him and told him to stop. Seojun turned around and was surprised by the usual release of magical power. But the doctor touched the boy's shoulder and knocked him to the ground, and said that he should not run out into the corridor. But first he needs to calm down. But Sojun used his technique and broke the wall underneath him. The doctor couldn't resist either and flew after the guy to the lower floor. Opening his eyes, he saw a family standing in front of him. He immediately decided that he needed to get up quickly. But suddenly a girl came up to him and with her energy put her foot on him. But Seojun covered his face and used his powers to push himself away from her. The girl asked the boy what he was doing here. Seojun immediately realized that she was also using magical powers. But she doesn't have them as strong as the mobile team, and you need to lure her closer and kill her. Sojun hoped that he could do it. After all, he had already killed two. And he remembered Ipeko's words, that the guy had promised her that he would run away from here. And now he would do whatever was required of him. But then the doctor stood between them and told them both to stop. The girl was indignant and said that this guy was to blame himself. But the doctor replied that he was a wanderer from Earth. Isn't it logical that everything surprises him? The doctor asked the guy if he had calmed down a bit, and he asks him for forgiveness because his girlfriend is quite bloodthirsty. Seojun gave a menacing look and asked, "What is this place? How long has he been out?" The doctor replied that it was the kingdom's 17th pioneer village, but the boy had just arrived, so he didn't know anything. Let him just think about it as if he were in another world. But Seojun thought that something was wrong. They thought that he was just an earthling who had come to them. And the warden said something like, "Besides the heroes, there seem to be random earthlings here." And before the Gehenna troops arrived, Sojun asked, "Did he sleep for about half a day?" The doctor was surprised and asked in surprise, "Half a day?" After all, in fact, he had already slept for 3 days. Seojun didn't believe it and asked him what he was talking about. Momi and her group were searching at that moment. Momi looked around and said that the kingdom had mobilized all its power. But Siren was holding a small toy in her hands and was staring at it. But Momi flew up to her and immediately grabbed the toy from her hands and said that something seemed strange to her. And this problem with traitors in Gehenna. Are they really being tested? But Momi turned out to be cunning and immediately threw the toy over the shore. But suddenly a strange guy appeared next to them and using his card said that it was just in time. She saw the guys passing by and said that a group of heroes had finally arrived at the scene. But the boy remembered the first time he came to this world. In front of him that day he saw Sojong, who said that he became the protagonist of another world. But the guy became curious and asked what it was. But looking at his hand and energy, he realized that he had the skill of command. And the princess told Seojun that they would test his skill, and he had to spread his arms and stand up straight. But the guy raised his hand and looked and saw that a card had appeared in his hands. He immediately realized that this was his skill, and he felt like he always knew how to use it, and the information was automatically downloaded into his brain. But then, why did the princess need to check his skill? But everything turned out to be much more surprising. Opening his eyes, he saw that he had moved to another place and asked what was happening. He screamed in pain that his head was splitting, but other people grabbed him and told him not to move. He saw the strange men grab Seo-jun and pin him to the ground, but the boy told them that he had done nothing, and now he was facing the strongest group of Gehenna. The guy said that he still wasn't used to it, and he came because he was told that they were his partners. And what does he see? Some mongrel. But his ally came up behind the guy and said he should have some manners. He was seeing these people for the first time. The guy asked, "What other manners?" After all, they were the ones asking him for something, and he indicated that they were the elders here. The guy didn't keep them waiting and threw the toy at their feet. Siren came up and picked it up, but Seo-jun asked why he needed to be polite, and why did they call them? He was in such a hurry here, and he still didn't know the full picture. I saw the guy passing by saying that they were in a hurry, but they still dragged themselves here all day. Mimo said that their mission was to find and capture the escaped criminal. And that was easy, wasn't it? The boy replied that he had heard from the king that it was all their fault. And why should he clean up after them? Can't they wipe their own asses? Mimo replied that this is what happened. And as he can see, most of the debris has settled to the bottom. And it is becoming increasingly difficult to keep track. And because of this incident, their comrade who could follow the tracks died. And they asked them to use the skill group of heroes. The guy turned around and looked at his subordinates and told them to try it too. The man in the mask stepped aside and touched the water with his hand, using his energy. He said he read it. And now, using the memory reading skill and his skill, they visualized the past. The mobile group should also take a look. The bald man told him to start the visualization, and immediately the guy demonstrated the ship crash. Baldy said that it is impossible to know what happened in non-linear space, and they see only a superficial picture, and now they'll rewind to the explosion itself. I looked at it and thought, this is psychometry and projection. And it looks like their group was put together in a hurry, since only basic skills were collected. But at that moment, she noticed how a body fell out of the ship in the painting, and she said that this was a jump phenomenon. The guy asked what this phenomenon of a jump is, like a game crash? Mimo answered that the phenomenon of a jump occurs when the skills of time and space, and are used in unstable time and space. Literally, it means that people nearby were transported in time and space, and it looks like a distortion skill was used. In other words, the criminal they're chasing wasn't caught in the explosion. He fell into the near past. But Sojin was in the forest at that moment and said that this was the place where he appeared. The assistant replied that yes, quite far from the village, and he was very lucky. Seojin immediately wondered what had happened, and why, after the explosion in non-linear time, did he end up in the mountains. But Sojun asked what he was doing in this forest. The girl came and said that things were bad, and Princess Netanya held a press conference, and she wants to summon a hero. Seo-jun, hearing about the princess, was shocked by what he heard. The guy asked Princess Netanya why she decided to call not 1 but 4 heroes at once. Wasn't their kingdom in danger because of the hero last time? Netanya responded that the uncontrolled conscription of heroes 9 years ago led to the massacre. The kingdom's alliance has not forgotten the damage caused by the empire. However, the kingdom's alliance is too weak, so they decided that heroes are a necessity. And they are not in a war situation. The people's reaction will be terrible. The soldiers asked when they would finally see peace, and everything was just starting to get better. And will these earthlings surround them again? Seojun apologized and asked the mercenary if he could explain it to him again. The mercenary replied that it wasn't even about him. Why was he asking? Let him just tell him, for the last time. And now the heroes are being called up 9 or 10 years after the last time, and 4 are being called up at once, which is strange. And such an incident as the murder of the princess has never happened. And the guy is sure that everything is okay with him? He hit his head pretty hard. Seo-jun thought hard about what had happened. Netanya was alive and well, and while the heroes hadn't been summoned, it was as if he had gone back in time. Or maybe it's because of Ipeko's suicide. But he doesn't know anything. And he feels like he died and went to the afterlife. But the mercenary said that the sights were over and it was time to go back. There were monsters everywhere. It was even a dangerous zone. A few days later, in the doctor's office, the doctor said that regenerative medicine helped a little, but there was still a risk of infection, so it was necessary to smear it with medicine. And he's afraid that scars are inevitable, and surgery might be the only way to remove them. But Seojun said it doesn't matter. And they can't be removed completely, right? Sojun picked up the mirror and looked at his appearance. Seojun smiled and said they were ugly, but the doctor said they cut his hair because it was healing. Seojun immediately asked, "They will grow up, right? And more importantly, this is the way back to Earth. Does he happen to know how to get back?" The doctor thought about it because he didn't know how to explain, and he asks the guy to listen and understand him, and he will now explain it to him as simply as possible. In general, it is impossible to return, and the doctor asked the boy if he knew what a fish trap looked like. The interdimensional gates that connect the Earth and this world have a similar structure, and that is why it is possible to come here from Earth, but it is impossible to return. Seojun replied that then it is also impossible to improve or make a new gate. Maybe make it bigger, or change the conditions. The doctor thought about it and replied that the records said that the gate was made about 2,000 years ago. Sojun asked if the technology had been lost. The doctor replied that, theoretically, the gate could be broken to make it larger, but that would require a colossal amount of energy. Or, in other words, enough to destroy their world. Sojun listened and said that it was still impossible, and now he understands. And thanks for the explanation. The doctor replied that there was no problem, and he apologized for not having good news for him, and Seojun immediately stood up to leave. But at the end, the doctor said that there was no need to hate their world, and this is a place where people live, and it may be unpredictable, but it is a place worth living in. Seojun closed the door and thought about the fact that he wouldn't be able to come back. And after Natanya heard his question about whether he could return, she said that they were pursuing common goals. And what does this even mean? And is there really no way to return to Earth? The girl who attacked him at that moment was training with her teacher and was losing. The teacher told her that this would not work. If she was under his command as a mercenary, she had to last at least 3 minutes. And not so far away, traces of monsters were found. They are biological weapons left by demons. And he doesn't know what brought them here. But there is a real leader among them. And if she is not vigilant, she will be killed. The girl listened to the teacher's instructions and replied that she understood everything. But Sojun knew that the mercenaries were stationed in the village, and if it is possible, I would like to establish contact with them, because he needs information, and especially about the mana dump. He needs to find a way to become stronger, and he feels like he's trying to increase his friendship points with NPCs in the game, and that's what he's the worst at. But that same evening, Seojun went to his room to take a nap. But the girl snuck up on him, holding a knife in her hands. But before that, Sojun used his energy and reproduced the stone, and he realized that nothing was working for him. But he found a couple of peculiarities in his skill, and the first continuous storage when using gravity to shoot is impossible. And there is a delay during the materialization with blue light, because saving and summoning items takes time, and the second gases can also be stored. However, it does not really matter. At one time, it can store 2 cubic meters, and he wondered if it was possible to preserve air for an invisible attack. But gases and liquids outside the vessels are preserved in very small quantities, and what's more, they evaporate immediately when he uses them. And finally, after numerous attempts to save the items, he realized his own limits and the storage limits. But suddenly Sojun grabbed his mouth and realized that 1,000 slots, 10 tons. This is the limit of his skill. And was this magical exhaustion? And as he continued to fill the inventory, which was supposed to be infinite, a warning appeared. And his storage skill is very strange. For a world without stats or levels, it seems too artificial, and there must be a reason for this. Suddenly, Sojun felt sick and said that his head was spinning, but he felt that someone came to his window and pretended to fall asleep in order to catch the burglar. But the girl also felt that something was wrong here. But Sojun narrowed his eyes and immediately used his energy against the enemy. But the girl was surprised by this. After all, a guy in a mask suddenly appeared in front of him. The guy attacked her with an axe and told her to confess to her crime. The girl asked who was there and used her energy to tear the enemy into 2 parts. She realized that it was just an illusion. But then Seojun appeared behind her to attack. But he did not spare her and immediately hit her in the face. The girl did not have time to react and received a strong blow. Seojun used his energy against her and told her to stop. And they'll end up here because she tried to kill him. But suddenly Seojun thought that was bad. After using the special command skill saved during torture, he had almost no magic left. and it's barely enough for 2 times. The girl answered the guy that she doesn't know who misinformed him like that, but to try to kill him? On the contrary, she is here to protect him. Sojun was surprised and asked, "What is she talking about?" and immediately looked at the ceiling. Sojun asked her, "What now? Do the bells ring at night?" The girl turned her head to the side and only saw how a monster appeared that attacked them. Sojun asked what was going on, but the monster didn't hesitate and started attacking, and the girl used her sword and attacked first. The monster exposed his nails to her attack, which he lost in that same second. Sojun realized that this was a monster from another world. There were slimes and goblins here, so where did the dinosaur come from? But the monster didn't pay attention to the girl and headed towards the guy. Sojun was just surprised, and while running away, he thought, why is he coming at him? And he decided to use his attack against the monster. He was thinking about how to kill the monster the fastest and where its weak spot was. The girl saw this and shouted at him to aim for the core that was in the stomach. And she decided to help him too, and distracted him from behind, and he cut off the monster's legs. The core immediately opened before his eyes, and Sojun saw where she was. Sojun didn't hold back and used full magic to attack straight at the target. The monster didn't even have time to dodge before he felt severe pain in his body. Something also fell on the guy from above and said that he was going to die now and crush him. As soon as he got to his feet, he immediately grabbed his mouth because the liquid was simply pouring out. The girl was surprised and asked him if he was wounded. But in a moment everything changed, and a strange thing jumped into the ceiling of the house. They were a little surprised and didn't know where it came from. The monster tore the floor with its fangs and climbed up to the second floor. But his fangs were so sharp and poisonous that he immediately prepared them. The girl didn't think long and used her sword. There was an unexpected explosion, after which the monster was bleeding liquid. But Sojun understood that while their inferior was buying time, the others had removed potential obstacles. But suddenly Shiola told the boy that he would do something stupid. He is not a hero from a game or a comic book. Does it matter whether a person dies or not? And does he want to feel guilty or sorry? Let him think about how he was treated in this world. And hasn't he already decided? He will do anything to escape from here. Sojun began to repeat to himself that he had to run and began to run away from the battlefield. Earlier, the girl asked the mercenary, upon arriving at a strange place, was this done by a man from the earth? The mercenary replied that he was following him when he said he wanted to train or something like that, and he'd never heard of such a skill. The girl said it was definitely tough. She personally examined the tracks everywhere and realized that it was dangerous. Seo-cheon was running away at that moment and realized that he was a fool. The dragon did not leave him alone and still pursued him. But Seo-cheon dodged its attack and decided to grab hold of its tail. But the dragon's tail was faster and injured the boy's shoulder. Seo-cheon got angry and said that in games, rolling usually helps to avoid attacks, and he won't run away. He's already decided. Of course he's scared to death, but to run away, even if he's decided, he'll do everything possible. And even if he himself is from another world, the person who helped him, he does not want to leave him. The girl also fought with the dragon and dodged, but eventually attacked him from behind. She realized that using the magic emission and teleportation skills one after another would kill her. The girl thought carefully, and having gained enough speed, she attacked with both legs and held her knife in her hands. But at the last moment she was a little surprised, because the dragon was able to resist this. The dragon simply gained a nice amount of speed for herself and fired several energy attacks at her. But the girl was not afraid, and pulling out her huge sword, she swung it several times. The attacks simply reached the dragon with great speed and left deep wounds. But Seo-cheon didn't stop either and used energy protection to send it straight into the dragon. But the girl saw that the guy was in danger. She ran up and grabbed him by the clothes and dragged him along with her. She simply saved his life and did not let him die. And after that, she stood up for him. Looking around carefully, she saw that the dragon was already wounded and was left without an arm. Seo-cheon understood that for 10 years it had existed autonomously, avoiding battle as much as possible, following the orders implanted in its brain, concentrating on survival. The team was rebooted a moment ago, in a place where a weak trace of magic passed through the nasal cavity and felt like a prick right in the brain. But the team was updated. The leader said that the memory restoration of Delta 01, and they faced their sworn enemy. And this is the highest priority target for destruction. and they need to eliminate it immediately. The target's physical abilities are not outstanding, but the supposed strength is incredibly powerful. Also, the creature next to the target has good physical characteristics, but the attack power does not pose a threat. And Delta 001 made its decision. The dragon simply became much stronger, and using its energy beam, it began to destroy everything in front of it. Seojin's defense didn't even help this time, and even his body was hit, and the girl's sword also broke into 2 pieces. But the mercenary did not stand aside either, and began to fight with the huge dragon. Raising his spear above his head, he immediately took aim and launched it straight at the dragon. But the dragon dodged his spear, and the most powerful teacher in the alliance entered the battle. He swung his sword and cut the dragon's belly, leaving his mark on its body. But the teacher did not stop there, and using his technique, he tore the dragon into small pieces. The teacher asked how many were left. The mercenary replied that there were 2 more, but he looked around and said that the leader was not yet visible. And he stopped the barrier, but if it did not hold, they could die. Having received colossal injuries after the dragon's attack, Sojun fell to his knees and realized that this world was truly corrupted. And in the detention center, before he was sent to Gehenna, the worst part was the lack of computer games or videos. But it's strange to be happy about getting into this world. Friends, family, no connections, absolutely. And safety here is just a joke. But why are these strange creatures hanging around here? Seojin got angry and said that this is really shitty. How did he come to this? In fact, he was dragged here and there for no reason. He couldn't even hit Natanya in the face once, and now he was caught by some strange creature. Seojin got really angry and immediately thought of a teleportation skill and told her to move him. The girl replied that it was possible, but there was a problem. Seojin told her right away to move him behind the monster. The girl was in great shock and asked the guy what he was talking about. Sojun did not despair and asked her again. The girl said she didn't know, and grabbing the guy's hand, she moved him back. Sojun instinctively felt that if he used the save skill one more time, he would die like Ipeko. Shiola immediately came to his senses and said that the only talent he had was skill retention. And now Seojun understands why he thought he was inexperienced. And of course he will admit it and try to change. And it's okay. He can feel the magic gathering slightly. Even if it's weak, it's okay. He can do it. Seojun chose the perfect moment and released a burst of magic and sent a powerful blow to the dragon. From such a strong impact, the core inside the dragon exploded, which was an important part of the organ in its body. Sojun couldn't stay on his feet after all this and fell down along with the dragon. He got up and saw that the dragon was lying down and was shocked that he had succeeded. But the dragon suddenly came to life and he had one last ardor to attack. Seojun didn't stop next to him and decided to run away. But then the teacher arrived and destroyed him with his sword. Sojun couldn't stay on his feet for a long time and fell to the ground. The teacher approached him and asked if he was still alive, and as he saw, the guy was betting everything on one single blow, just like the prince had said. Sojun suddenly opened his eyes and asked the man what he was talking about. But the teacher replied that they would talk to him when he woke up. Earlier, the prince told the teacher during the game that very soon, a stranger from Earth would appear. In a place called the 17th Pioneer Village, that's all he knows for now, and let them lead their subordinates and penetrate the kingdom. And they can use mercenaries. And you also need to watch over this person and protect him. Training won't hurt either. The teacher asked the prince, did he see it again? And of course he asks for forgiveness, but they still haven't revealed the identity of their enemy. The prince replied that the teacher would be sure that everything would be fine. This is a skill he possesses. The next morning, the doctor was already saying that he never thought he would become a patient himself. And it seems that such things happen in life, and at least no one died, which is good. And he really thought he was going to die. And he wants to thank the guy for risking his life for someone from another world, even though he himself is from Earth. Sojun was surprised and immediately asked what happened to the girl who fought with him. The doctor told the boy that he was talking about Sanary, but suddenly the teacher arrived and said that his visit should have been the first. The teacher asked the doctor if he could leave them for a second. The doctor immediately asked him not to do anything strange, but the teacher replied that he would try to restrain himself as much as he could, and he immediately sat down in front of the boy. The teacher asked the boy if he had slept well, since he had severe mana depletion. Sojun asked him if he was from the Empire. The teacher was surprised and replied that the guy wanted to get straight to the point. so that's what they would do with him. After all, this attack was due to traces of his mana. He left a mess behind in this place, and the monsters that attacked them were attracted by the hero's mana. And only those who were in the war know about it. Be sure of it, hero. Sojin replied that he did not know about it. The teacher said he was not saying this to shame him, but because the information was important. And it was because of his ignorance, right? Seojun asked the man how he knew the guy was a hero. Seojun replied that their prince had a special skill, but they will continue where they started. Aliens from other worlds, demons, have constructed a terrible bioweapon, and this is the true essence of these creatures. Sojun was surprised and replied that he didn't expect such a story. And the guy wouldn't say that there was some kind of demon king or demon continent, would he? The guy said there was something similar. And had the guy heard about the one-way gate connecting their world and Earth? Sojin wasn't even surprised and replied that yes. The teacher then said that things would go faster since he knew. And the reason they can't increase the input is because the technology is not from their world. 2,000 years ago, humans copied the gates that the demons had entered through. They simply recreated them. Seojin asked, "Isn't that irresponsible? Why would anyone want to summon people into this world? And why was he called?" The man answered that it was the other way around. It was not they who were calling people, but someone from the earth who had called them here. Seojun asked him what he meant. The man replied that what he said. The story he told is written even in textbooks, but from now on, everything is much deeper. And the reason why the earthlings were called as heroes, the reason why he was called, it is that the guy can see souls. Seojun did not believe it and started laughing. He asked, "What kind of nonsense is this?" And suddenly he remembered everything unexpectedly when he was thrown into another world. The man looked and told the boy that it seemed like he had already figured it all out. Sojun replied that before he spoke further, maybe they could connect the dots. Sojun asked the man, "Are their enemies demons?" The man replied, "No, the Kingdom Alliance. But they're trying to figure out if demons are involved, with the help of a guy who's a transmigrator from the future. Demons can turn into spirits after death, and if there is a body for them, they can be resurrected. And if the kingdom and the demons are together, it's very bad." So June thought about it and suggested that they join forces, but not for free. First, he needs to train him. Second, arrange a meeting with the prince for him. Third, they must fight him with a special task. The man replied that the third point was beyond his authority. What special case? Sojun replied that they would not allow the Princess of Netanya to summon a hero. Seojun consciously decided that he would prevent everything. At that moment, deep in the forest, there was a room in which a man in a suit was lying, but there was a timer hanging on his chest, and as soon as the countdown ended, Sheol immediately woke up. The guy came up to him and asked Sheol if he had a good dream. Sheol replied that it was not bad, although only for 3 minutes. The boy told him that it was difficult to experiment while avoiding the princess, but Sheol replied that without his skill, it would have been completely impossible. But the guy said he had to use his brain to survive, right? Sheol replied that it was true. Their survival was the top priority. The next day, Seojun was ready for new training. He even liked the equipment. The guy said it was low-grade armor used by mercenaries, and that was enough for him right now. Sojun was surprised and replied that he understood, but the teacher told him not to make that disappointed face, and he would soon thank the teacher. The teacher did not spare him and told him to run 50 laps. Sojun was shocked by the task and asked, "What?" The teacher asked him what the reaction was. After all, he himself asked, and even wanted training. Then you need to act. Sojun replied that 50 circles, that's right away. The teacher decided to think a little first and said that if he was afraid, he could die right away. Sojun immediately raised his head and looked at the teacher. The man asked, "What is he afraid of?" Sojun smiled and told the master that he shouldn't say such a thing to a Korean. Having prepared himself, the master told the student that he would follow him. Watch how he carried out the task. Sojun started running and said that he would run these 50 laps, but after running a few laps, he fell to the ground. The master said that it always happens like that at first. Sojun couldn't even move and said that he was going to die. But master told him that he hadn't even run half of the half. But suddenly the mercenary came and addressed the commander. The master turned around and asked him, "Why is he here?" The mercenary said that it looked like they would have to hide the body. But the master asked him, How was Sanari? The mercenary replied that she had been fitted with a mechanical arm. It would be a long time before she returned. Sojun heard them and asked them what they were saying about the girl who fought with him, and of course he is glad that she will be able to return. The master was surprised and told the student that it seems that he still has strength since he is chattering. But Sojun was upset immediately after such words. But the teacher told him to run to the village. Sojun obeyed the order and began to carry it out. The master continued to run after him and told him not to stop. It was still a long way to 50 laps. But Sojun replied that he had already forgotten how much he had run. But the master said that in order to add variety to the training, he would give him a special lecture. Sojun replied, "What other variety?" The master told the boy that perhaps he was thinking, why is he making him run? But this is because stamina is the most important quality in battle. Sojun replied that he understood. This is because enhancing muscles with mana requires stamina. The master said that everything is correct. Therefore, working with endurance is very important. And besides, he is one of those who put everything on one hit. Sojun immediately thought about one hit. And if you think about it, when he played games in Korea, he only used guns and revolvers with high damage per hit. And he misses those days already. But the master told him to stop whining. He needs to run until he can put everything into this punch. And despite the crude name of the power type, if it hits at the wrong moment, it can kill. Sojun asked, "Is there a type of technique whose strength is in the frequency of attacks, and a type that is powerful and which has an advantage in level?" The master told the boy that he knew well. Where did he hear about it? Sojun replied that it was from a woman he would like to hit if he met her again. But the master said that in any case his mana level is slightly higher than usual, and he has a lot to learn, and it's a long way to go before he's sufficiently trained. Sojun listened to the instructions and replied that he understood. But do they need to talk about it right now? The boy asked. The master replied that it was obvious that the guy would be running until sunset, so he was explaining it to him now. But one of the heroes said during the search that it was deadly boring here, and the fact that they are in different time zones means that even if they track his mana flows, he may end up in a different place. And of course they wouldn't miss this moment, right? But suddenly the guy stopped the car and said that they knew about it, and they had already arrived. The guy came out and said that he seemed to be seasick and his butt already hurt, and asked if his name was Kim Sojun, and we need to catch him quickly and head home. That same evening, Sojun had already begun training with the sword, under the guidance of his new teacher. But the teacher also participated in this training and sparred with his student, repelling his attack. But Sojun didn't like it and used his mana to attack again and stronger. The teacher looked and said that he thought it was a stretch, but passed. But Sojun replied that he could barely keep up with the teacher. But after that, Sojun decided to discuss with the others what to do next. And there was about a month left. And their main goal is to disrupt the call of heroes that Princess Netanya has planned. In exactly 1 month, once the ritual begins, they will infiltrate the palace, stop her, and if they succeed, they will destroy the summoning magic once and for all, so that no one else can use it. And for this, they need additional people. 4 people are clearly not enough. The mercenary replied that despite the fact that the commander had repeatedly asked the prince for reinforcements, he had replied that it was impossible, and we'll have to figure it out ourselves. Wasn't that what all those grueling workouts were for? Sojun asked them what they were talking about. In that case, they were just being sent to slaughter. Does their prince even realize what he's doing? They're on the same side, aren't they? And he's grateful for the help, but this is too much. And besides, why are they hiding the most important information from him? The master answered, because it doesn't matter now. Sojun started to get indignant and asked, how much longer can we drag it out? The master replied that they would forget about it for now. Right now, it was more important to deal with Netanya and Seol. And he did say that he saw Netanya's spiritual body, but they never found any evidence that she was a demon. Sojun replied that he himself didn't see it. They were even together. Then where did they think he came from? The mercenary replied that, according to the investigation, her biography was absolutely clean. And Master said that for 20 years, she has been holding herself up like a member of the royal family without a flaw. The demons simply don't have that kind of power now. Most of them, 95% to be exact, died 11 years ago during the war. Unless she is some legendary figure from the past. Netanya cannot be a demon, Besides, he said that before the airship exploded, she used teleportation. Sojun replied that he did and asked, "So what?" The master replied that he had told him before that one of the conditions was the ability to see souls. Didn't he mention that? People from the earth can recognize souls. Residents of other worlds have magic and skills. Demons can be reborn as spiritual entities, and that means it's their racial trait. Just like each person can only have one skill, there can only be one racial trait. That is, skills and spiritual form cannot exist simultaneously. Sojun thought about it and said that it seemed like they had reached a dead end, and they would leave Natanya's origin aside. He couldn't figure out what this woman's goal was. And why did she have to arrange all this? She first threw him into the prison of Gehenna, and then pulled him out of there. But the mercenary reached for the food and said that the more he thought, the more he wanted to eat. He even got hungry. The master answered him that with his build, he needed a lot to keep in shape. But the mercenary asked the commander if there was a way to be more gentle. Sojun suddenly told them to get ready. But the master said that he thought that everything the boy had experienced was not a Netanya performance. This is actually a typical problem that occurs when there are two heads on a team. And he's talking about Seol. This guy just thinks differently than Netanya, and whatever he plans, it's going to be terrible. And he needs to be careful. From what he says, this man is unpredictable. No one knows what he can do. In the evening, Seojun went out into the yard and saw the girl training. Sanari felt his presence and asked, "Is the meeting over yet?" Seojun asked her if she had gotten used to the prosthesis yet. Sanari replied that she had gotten used to it more or less. And they say technology has advanced greatly in the last 2 wars, especially those related to magical instruments. She heard that some people even replace their eyes with high-precision implants. Seojun asked her why she didn't cover her hand with artificial skin. Sanari asked him why? The metal arm looked cool. Seojun replied that he agreed with her. And suddenly, sitting down, Sanari said that the commander asked her to thank him. Sojun asked, "For what?" After all, he hadn't done anything special. Sanari asked the boy if he remembered when they encountered the monster. They said he fought bravely and did not try to run away. Both she and the captain are from Earth, which means that they, the outsiders and heroes, are not particularly welcome here. Seojun said that it was the same case with Gat. Even a person with hair and eye color similar to hers hated him. Sanari replied that many inhabitants of other worlds suffered because of Earthlings. This is a completely natural reaction. But after she sided with the prince, her thoughts changed a little. And did her words really ask him? Seojun replied that yes, and she spoke as if the victims were only those from other worlds. Conflicts and chaos between earthly people and inhabitants of other worlds are all due to their position and experience. They all have different points of view. It is better to be an ally of the prince. He will save the Earthlings too. Seojun saw that the prince seemed to be idolized. Netanya, Seol, and the prince didn't care that they had planned it that way. He just wants to get out of this world. And if someone tries to interfere, he will kill them. But after all this, they decided to go on strike and asked Queen Netanya to immediately stop calling up heroes. Let her immediately stop all her plans, and they are all against her call. Sanari saw these stupid people and asked, "Are they serious?" A month ago, Namanik and Seojun were sitting at the table, and the guy opened a soda to drink a little. The mercenary didn't like this, and slamming his fists on the table, he asked the guy if he was the only one drinking. Let him pour him some too. But Sojun was greedy and started pouring everything into his stomach. The mercenary said that this guy is really crazy. Seojun said it was amazing that they even had that in this world. But the mercenary tried it and said that spicy dishes were the best. And the people who got into this world have been stuck here since the millennium before last. And they too cannot return. This is the result of persistent attempts to recreate the taste of their native home. Sojun said that every year people come from the earth to this world, strangers. But the mercenary suggested not to waste time and quickly make a plan. If they continue like this, they will definitely fail. This is the plan of the inside of the palace that we managed to get hold of. And the problem is how to get around the patrols. The mercenary replied that the space where magic is blocked. The field surrounds the central passage in the form of a ring. A magic blocking field completely isolates this space from the outside world, making it impossible to penetrate or select via teleportation. And the only way is to enter it on your own 2 feet. and it looks like magic will be possible inside the central hall. But Sojin thought about it, because in the field there was the same thing he saw in Gehenna. The mercenary said that seriously, it was impossible, and even with his abilities, they are too few people. Sojun asked the mercenary to tell him more about the outsiders. The mercenary asked if there was a reason for this. Seojun replied that he thought he might have a good idea. The mercenary said that if that was the case, then overall, they did not have a very good position in society. Their status is unclear, and they are often viewed with prejudice or disdain. The country is considered to be quite peaceful, so many outsiders have come here. In some countries, they are even kept in special zones, as if they were camps. That is why outsiders, unhappy with this situation, organize mass protests. Seojin started looking for a way to get to the border, and when he found it, he said that he wasn't sure, but they'd try to use this. They decided to also go on strike to get to their plan. The guards saw them and started shouting that they were running straight at them. But Seojun used his powers and broke through the guards, but one of them saw him and immediately decided to stop him. But Sojun turned around and started to defend himself, and the guard didn't stop and continued to attack. Suddenly, Sojun saw that his stick was shattered, and he realized that here is the border and immediately dodged and started to run away. The guard asked the guy if he was running away again, and shouted after him that he was just a coward. Seojun got there and said that it was starting to piss him off. And seeing the guy in front of him, he asked who he was, and can he even see him with that fringe? The guy replied that he thought he could see him pretty clearly. Seojun said it was even impressive, but the guy looked at it and called him cool, and he started to demonstrate his attacks. But Sojun thought it was strange and asked him who he was, but the guy said that Sojun had fooled the police, and using the check, he said that his skills were unfinished, but his movements were not bad. But the final moment was a bit disappointing, and if he can't hit, at least let him try to stab. Or is he afraid of getting hurt? Seojin replied that attacking a police officer is a crime. Does the stranger know? And isn't that too naive? The stranger started laughing and replied that it was a good point and he was right. An attack on a police officer. And apparently he had made a mistake in his conclusions. And the guy doesn't think that this world is wrong? Sojun understood that school, work, time with family. They are earthlings. They find themselves in this alien world. They leave their old life behind and can't go back to it. Unless he's one of those people who just quietly continues to live. What if they have a family to support? Who will feed them? The stranger said that most strangers cannot return home and simply continue to live, accepting this reality. But why call upon heroes at all to increase the number of victims? To prevent the appearance of even more innocent countrymen. And this is actually their mission. Seojun shook his hand and said that he would join his goal. What is his partner's name then? The guy asked. The stranger replied that his partner's name was Nergal. Seojun thought it would be better to use a pseudonym. He decided to introduce himself as Junso Kim.